Well, you're.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in for another great conversation. And before I start, I just would like to remind you to join my mailing list and check my books as well. You can find them on my website. Also, if you want to support the channel, I have Patreon, PayPal. I also have the super chats and super thanks, so we can use that as well. But today, for the third time, I'm very pleased and very happy to connect with Jeff Brown, who I had before on my channel. So you can check out those conversations as well. And I reached out to Jeff in a specific interest about a country that he actually knows a lot. He even wrote a book about that country, China Rising. This is Jeff's book. There is a trilogy, actually, right? There are 3 books.
The trilogy.
The trilogy, yes. And I originally wanted, which I will today, ask Jeff about China and things related to it. However, Jeff emailed me something very, very important, incredibly disturbing, but I know a lot of my viewers are very aware of those things. Jeff, can you tell me about that research that you have done in regard of Ukraine, Red Cross, and the body parts that were taken from children, as I believe, in Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, China is our main subject, but James Bradley and I have a new program called JB West and JB East to see you in The Hague, because we're exposing a lot of war crimes. And we first got into COVID, of course, which was an American bioweapon. Then the Russians have exposed horrific bioweapon war crimes in Ukraine, and the Russians have already officially announced that there will be war crimes trials, just like in Nuremberg after World War II, to have these people's day in court. And we keep doing all of this research, and I can thank Irina Boyko, who I keep a running blog for her on my website. She's a Russian, and she finds all this stuff in Russia, and she sent us an article about organ harvesting in Mariupol and how it was being hidden behind the Red Cross. And so I did a lot of research. I watched all the footage of all the links, in Russian. I don't speak Russian, but you don't need to speak Russian to see what I was looking at. And then just today or yesterday, I think it was just today, more information was coming out about when Mariupol was under Ukrainian control. The Red Cross base there was being used for massive child organ transplanting. And there, over 1,000 records on children's organs were found there. And in this new information that Irina just sent, and I shared with you, they found heavily reinforced cold lockers to store organs underneath the Red Cross center in Mariupol. So I'm sure that the Russians will do a full investigation about what was going on down there. And apparently it was a gigantic organ harvesting center. And as I pointed out, James and I pointed out, Israeli doctors were, the day after the Russians moved into the Donbass, Israeli doctors started moving into Ukraine under supposed humanitarian for humanitarian work, but were in fact going there to do organ harvesting. So it is so difficult to confront, and it is so
Yes.
stomach turning and revolting and shocking that this is such a massive, massive, massive industry, up to $8 billion a year. And for years now, the Ukraine, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, Ukraine has been not only money laundering central, bioweapon central. We now have organ harvesting central. James and I have also, baby farms, child trafficking for pedophilia. Ukraine is the center of all of Western empires, vast criminal operations, and the Russians are going to expose it. And let's just hope that some of these people are served justice for the war crimes they have committed.
But first of all, I want to thank you so much for doing that research and for sending me this email. Like I said, I just started to listen to that video, but I want to thank you for this, Jeff. And like my viewers now who want to get more information or watch the video, I will send them to your website, to your links.
Thank you.
So they can go into details there.
Absolutely, thank you.
And another thing, just to finish on this subject, that very, very frequent traffic that started to happen with all the celebrities going to Ukraine. So many celebrities. And I was watching, and of course, Angelina Jolie shows up, everyone that everyone we are aware of, especially my audience is aware of what they really represent. And that traffic of the individuals that I was watching, literally like checking off the list. I'm like, this one went, this one went, this one went. No surprise, right? You just said what, and I was expecting actually this very much. I think this is on much bigger scale than we realize, and there's more places in Ukraine. But let's move into China, because I already feel the heaviness of this energy, and it's very, very, very difficult to talk about it for me. Jeff, in your book, China Rising, actually in the trilogy, in those 3 books, you are deprogramming the Westerners about pretty much everything they have been learned about Chinese people, Chinese culture, China as a country. So I would like to know, first of all, because I'm aware you spent quite significant time in China.
16 years.
Yes, that's very, very significant time, almost like me in US. So you definitely know the country. Yeah. Can you tell us, let's start with this. What is the biggest misconception, deliberately or not deliberately created, that people of the other parts of the world, especially Western countries, think about China, and how it really is in reality there?
The biggest misconception, and this is a problem, and I think it's probably a lot to do with human nature, but Westerners are so infatuated with themselves and so full of hubris about their moral, technological, intellectual, cultural superiority over the rest of the world, that they think that China, they think that the rest of the world is just like us. The West is the best. But in fact, China is fundamentally 180 degrees different from the West, and the biggest reason is that China's civilization and culture and governance are based on ethics. And Western, well, we have ethics, but I'm talking about the ethic of the golden rule: do unto others as you would want done unto you. The Chinese reverse it in Chinese as do not do unto others what you do not want done to you. That's basically the entire Chinese civilization, and don't have time to go into it. I mean, I wrote books about it, but that is the basis of Confucian, Taoist, Buddhist governance in China. And in the West, we are moral. We base our governance, civilization, and culture on morals and religion. Now, I did mention Buddhism, but Buddhism is not like Judaism or Christianity. It is a God. In fact, Buddhism has no God. It's basically an atheistic religion about you and how you interact with the universe and how you interact with people. It's very, very ethically based. It's not morally based. In the West, it's morally based, and it's based on religions and laws. And the problem with morals and laws is that if your morals and laws are different than mine, and I think that my morals and laws are better than yours, then you need to follow my morals and laws, because mine are superior. And my religion is better than yours. And so my laws are better than yours. My morals are better than yours. And so that's why there's so much darn war, and the history of the West is just non-stop violence for the last 3,000 years. And I even created a thing called the West 6 E's of racism, because it really goes back to, way back to early Greek, ancient Greece. The West is expansionistic. We exterminate, we expropriate, we extract, we enslave, and we are evangelistic. And we can now add another E, epidemics, with all of the bioweapons. So that's the huge difference. And unfortunately, because the West has been so it's so normal for us to invade countries, because we are superior, we are racially better, it's normal that we should invade, that we should try to crush Russia and force opium and morphine and heroin on 1/4 of the world's population for 110 years until the communists brought it to an end in 1949. It's normal for us to, I think they have calculated something like 10,000 military interventions in Latin America going back, 150 years by the Americans. It's normal for the French to starve 8% of the Indo-Chinese population intentionally by removing all of the rice and starving them to death. It has become so normalized for us. And I think as what you're seeing with China and Russia is China and Russia, they put up with, they held their noses post-war. They held their noses and put up with this garbage for the last 75 years. But now China and Russia, they're not going to take it anymore. They are saying enough is enough. And we want a new world, a better world, a win-win world, a mutually beneficial relationship between everybody, sharing. Nobody's expected to renounce their their core interests, but clearly China and Russia are seeking a new world order to bring down the Bretton Woods. And as far as you can go all the way back to the Crusades and Alexander the Great, the 6 E's of racism, they've had it, and you can see it in their.
But that's a different New World Order. Sorry to interject.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I know, because I will have a lot of comments what Jeff is saying. Jeff knows exactly what he's saying. Yeah, this is not the NWO that is planned for so long.
This Western, what is it, Ania? They talk. What is it that what is it they call it? The established world order. What is it that the Western politicians always call it?
Oh no, I think they actually call it the New World Order. They
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the New World Order is even worse. Now we're talking about techno-fascism, implants in the arms to track us, drugs. But they always talk about, China and Russia are trying to upset the established, I can't remember. Anyways, basically it's Bretton Woods. But anyway, go ahead.
Jeff, can I ask you within this, because this really is a big interest of mine, and I'm sure you know about this a lot. So as you mentioned, this golden rule, don't do to another what you don't want to be done to yourself. So tell me, that credit system in China, those farms where they keep people, because we know that the Communist Party there, the Chinese governments, I mean, it's not just I've heard, I actually have seen some footage, quite some number of videos. How is this, if this exists, how this goes along with this golden rule? Because they are—
What farms are you talking about, Ania?
So I saw the videos about the government in China holding people in some like concentration camps. I don't know exactly what was the reason, if they were not obedient, or I would like to know, because I haven't been there. You live there for so long. Tell me, what is really going on, as much as you know about this?
Unfortunately, that is the CIA, the National Endowment for Democracy, the USAID, all of these, George Soros, Open Society, all of these, phony NGOs supporting democracy, quote, Western democracy around the world. They finance people who are from Xinjiang, which I've been to and traveled to, and they're Muslim, and I've traveled all through there, and I traveled all through the Tibetan Plateau, which they've also tried to subvert and sabotage. They have created, the CIA. They have created these organizations, these phony NGOs outside of China, to create East Turkestan in what is today Xinjiang, which is the northwestern province in China. And they speak Turkic, but China and Xinjiang have had relations going back, for thousands of years. So what you're seeing is what CIA propaganda, and you know how the big lie propaganda machine works. They get a guy who is Turkic and who is Uyghur. They're called Uyghurs, who live there. The people who live, it's one of the minorities in China, and they get a Uyghur who lives in Paris or New York or London, living the high life, and well paid. And this organization comes out with a report that China is imprisoning 1 million. Well, first off, it started out at 300,000 or whatever, but you know how it goes. It just gets bigger and bigger. Now I think we're up to like 3 million of the 28 million people that are supposedly in gulags in Xinjiang. It's simply not true. It's just,
Wow.
and then unfortunately, because the West controls the United Nations, this organ is this phony uh, storefront by the CIA was given time to give their presentation to the United Nations, and then it is all very carefully. You know how it works. It's just like a fire hose, and then all over the world immediately after that, everywhere, CNN, BBC, all over, Le Monde, Washington Post, everywhere, all over the world, and in Poland and where you are, and everywhere else. China imprisoning 1 million Muslims in gulags. It's simply not true. And it's just, but unfortunately, this big lie propaganda machine works. And it, first off, China has no reason to imprison them. They don't want to imprison it. Why? They want them to work and make money and pay taxes. And the West cannot stand the fact that they had these same Uyghur subversives were in Xinjiang. And back when my wife and I were there, our second time around 2013, there were some violent attacks in China by these supposed Uyghur separatists, and they stabbed people in train stations and all, etc. These are just classic Western CIA styled, false flags to create terror among the people. Well, what happened is at that point, China passed a foreign NGO control law, got rid of all those terrorists, and it must be said, in Xinjiang and Tibet, after 1949, the rule was let the Tibetans be Tibetans and let the Uyghurs be Uyghurs. And so for most of that time, they went to school in learning Tibetan, and they went to school learning Turkic. Then it was realized after the 1980s, as China's economy exploded, these people were at a disadvantage because their Mandarin was not good enough to compete with all the other people in the rest of the country who speak Mandarin, because that's the language of business and finance and everything else, and government and everything. So starting in the 2000s, they went and started teaching Mandarin with Tibetan in Tibet and with Turkic in Xinjiang. Of course, that was used as propaganda against the Chinese for trying to wipe out their culture. I mean, you can't win with the West. You're always going to be doing something horrific. However, now, after 20 years of Tibet and Xinjiang, learning both Tibetan and trust me, I've traveled all over that area. Signs are in Tibetan, signs are in Turkic, signs are in Mandarin. People speak Turkic, people speak they speak Mandarin. If they want to speak Tibetan, they speak Tibetan. It's just complete. It is a complete and total lie, and it's a big lie. And so I'm sorry that you were misinformed. Xinjiang is booming. Tibet is booming. Another thing I'd like to point out is that China's 56, 55 minorities, including the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, including the Tibetans, and I traveled all through the Bai country and Miao country and other parts out west. You know, there's I'm having a brain burp, but the other Muslim, the Hui, met Hui. I met all these different people. They're the most spoiled citizens in China. They get whatever they want. I mean, if you're a minority in China, they go out, they do everything they can to help the minorities there. They get special favors. They start complaining. They get whatever they want. And you know, they have the Chinese. They make sure that all these tiny languages, you know, the Hui and the Miao and the Bai and all these others, they have textbooks, and everything is bilingual, Mandarin, and they're in both languages. You don't find that very often in many other countries. And so I just what can I tell you? And then poor Michelle Bachelet from the United Nations, she just went there and she was excoriated because she said she didn't say, oh yeah, there's 1 million Muslims, you know, living in gulags, you know, in Xinjiang. She didn't say, she said, I didn't see anything. Muslim clerics, imams, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of imams have come to Xinjiang and met people in Xinjiang. There are 20, they all said there's no gulags. They,
you know, this is to me, listening to this, I feel like it's, I truly believed, because, okay, as I'm aware now, if this doesn't exist, then I don't know, Jeff, let me ask you this. There is a credit system in China.
Oh yeah,
they have implemented this. So to me, that vision of people who don't comply with the credit, who are bad behaving, etc., that to me was like, if you don't live certain way as the government tells you, then you end up in that camp. So tell me now how wrong I am in this connection here, and how is this credit system? I'm very curious about it. How does it, because this is not healthy for sure, and this is not freedom for sure.
Well, as much as I like you, Ania, I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Okay.
You know, we already have a credit system in the United States and Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
We already have it. We try to get a bad information removed from your credit score in Europe or in the West, anywhere. These are private companies selling my information to God knows who. I have no idea who they are selling my information to.
Sure. Yeah.
I have to pay to see my information. And then if there's a mistake, try getting information removed. It is almost impossible. And people sometimes end up having to hire lawyers to get bad information removed from their credit scores. We also know that everything in the West is being stored in massive computers in Utah. All of our bank statements, all of our social media, all of our phone calls, all of our text messages, all of that is being vacuumed and stored for potential abuse all over the world. I mean, that's what the deep state in the West is doing. We know that. They don't even deny it.
Now, in California, Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
just recently, they had some, I don't know if there will be a lawsuit or something, like how they can win this truly. FBI, for the last 2 years of the pandemic, was doing some tests. I forgot the number of citizens of people who live in California state. every single data was stolen. Every single thing they look into. So they have, a huge amount of people. FBI. Yeah.
Now
Sorry
let's
to
go
interrupt you.
to
Yes.
let's go to China. As I explained, in fact, I just explained, and I wrote a really wonderful article about the social credit system. If you'd like to add that to my stuff,
Yes.
it's a couple of 3 years old, but it doesn't matter because nothing's changed. In fact, it's just gotten better. During the Mao era, there was no crime. I mean, literally no crime. There was no drugs, there was no gambling, there was no prostitution, there was no loan sharking, there were no mafias. There was literally virtually zero crime. When Mao died and they started the reforms and opening up in the 1980s, this unfortunately made for brutal jungle capitalism at the street level. And my wife and I lived there for 7 years, from 1990 to 1997, and I can tell you it was intense. It was extremely intense. Nobody trusted anybody. It was, I mean, it's still a communist socialist country. I mean, everything, nationalized assets. The macro governance didn't change, but at the street level, it was dog eat dog. Nobody trusted anybody. Crime was going through the roof. And that was one of the reasons the people at Tiananmen were upset, because crime and corruption were going through the roof, both in business, government, and education, military. The corruption became awful because the dogs of capitalism were unleashed in China, and it was like my wife and I say, it was literally almost, it was like a five pack a day, nicotine habit. It was so intense living back then because it was so cutthroat, but it was almost like a drug. It got its hooks into you. It was almost like you enjoyed it. And I used to call it my 5 pack a day Nat King Cole, nicotine habit. It was so bad. It did get better, into the 2000s. It did get somewhat better, but still very, 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 very corrupt. Xi Jinping was elected president and party secretary 2012, 2013. And he was the man for the job. And the people were demanding, we've got to get this thing, we've got to get this country, they were pining for Mao. They were pining for those days when they didn't have to lock their doors, when they didn't have to worry about being robbed and attacked and stuff. So Xi Jinping and the leadership, the National Party, the National People's Congress, and again, all the way filtering up from the local governments, all the way up to the national governments, the National People's Congress. They came up with this idea of a social credit system. This is people powered. This is not corporate powered. Like in the United States, Experian and TRW and all these other these corporate thieves, controlling my information. In China, the social credit system is people driven. It is totally free. It is totally open. And it is totally rectifiable if there is any mistake. Let me explain. I have, in fact, while I'm talking, if you'll let me, I can even show you. I have my social score on my card. I had to restart. Anyway, I have a social score in China. That's 633 out of 950. It's not great, but it's good. Um, if if someone wants to do business with me, all they do is they say, Jeff, if before we sign the contract, I'd like to get your national ID and look at your social credit score to make sure you're trustworthy. Mm-hmm. It's all about trust. The social credit system is all based on trust. Oh, he sees, okay, 633. Well, okay, I'll sign the contract. Every time you do something bad, every time you violate the golden rule, every time you do something to someone that you would not want done to you, your social score is negatively affected. Every time you do something good, and your score goes up. Like if you contribute to the city or to your community or to your temple or etc., your score can go up. And if you feel like you have been wronged, there is an online arbitration system where you can get bad information removed, free, no cost. If there's an angry crank out there who is making false claims against people, well, his score is going to go down the tubes. But here's the secret, Ania. The social credit system is not focused on the individual. The social credit system is focused on corporations, businesses, government bureaus, and government bureaucrats. That is the focus of the social credit system. So if you are a corrupt government bureaucrat and someone can prove that you took a bribe, well, that's going to go on your score. And if your corporation has polluted a river and that gets reported on your corporate score, then you may not be able to issue corporate bonds. You may not be able to borrow money from a bank. It's all about accountability. And my wife and I, when we were in China from 2010 to 2019, we had a limited liability company, a little education company. And there's my social credit score. There's our social credit score registration number on our business license. And anybody, if a parent wanted to check our score before they allowed their children to be taught by us after school, to be tutored after school, they could check our score. All free. All free. Who would not want a system like that? If a deadbeat father doesn't pay his alimony and his child support to his divorced family, wouldn't you want him to pay a price? That's what this is all about. At the individual level, it's mainly debt loafers, people who don't pay their debts. And so, well, if you owe $6 million or, if you owe $10,000 to your family because you haven't paid alimony and child support in the last 2 years, well, okay, you can't take first class on an airplane. You can't even take an airplane.
So that's what it is. Okay.
So you can't take first class on a high-speed train. You can't even take a high-speed. It just depends on how bad you can take a normal train and go at 100 kilometers an hour. So this is what this is all. It's all about transparency and accountability and trust. And everybody loves it.
It just blows my mind how the narrative, Jeff.
Well, that's the big lie propaganda.
It really blows my mind. It's almost like they've built the wall that is so thick with this narrative that is almost
While you're
like,
talking, I'm going to see if you keep talking. I'm going to say I'm going to show you my
yes,
score on.
please,
I'm going to show you
because everything you were saying, and I so appreciate you sharing this. Everything I thought is not.
yeah.
Is twisted.
It's horrible.
Is just mind-blowing to me. But you know, I think maybe we have a little time for one more question. We, as much as you can tell me about the situation that might be escalating more and more, United States getting their hands into Taiwan situation. How do you see this? Are you there, Jeff? Oh yes, you are. Okay. How you see this going forward? How you see that going forward? Because, you know, there has to be a new conflict after Ukraine, right?
Well, I think you and I maybe talked about this last time. The reason the West is now up against what I call the Asian Quad. And the Asian Quad is North Korea, China, Iran, and Russia. And those four countries are locked together. They're all anti-imperialist, all anti-Western. Iran is very, very socialist, although people they don't want to admit it. But Iran is more socialist than Muslim, Islamic. DPRK, communist socialist. China, communist socialist. Russia, a huge sector of its economy, still very socialist from the USSR. Huge state presence in the economy, and as we are seeing in the Ukraine, very anti-imperialist, Western imperialism. So they're screwed. I mean, the West cannot do anything in Asia now. I mean, they're shut out of Asia. Listen, Anya, you know this has been going on since the 1930s, even before Mao and the communists liberated China in 1949. The West were already, you know, trying to crush China. They worked all back in the 50s and 60s. It was Tibet. That went nowhere. And, you know, Taiwan, that went nowhere. And they, you know, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, those were all about trying to crush China. It wasn't about, it was about trying to crush and contain China. Then Xinjiang, then Hong Kong. Like you said, it's just the big lie. They just keep all these color revolutions, etc. Macau was different than Hong Kong. It came back and cooperated with China much. When you go to Macau, they've got nothing against. No one's got anything against the Chinese, and they work very, very closely together. And so Taiwan was just kind of there. Well, nothing else is working. Tibet's not working. Xinjiang's not working. China passed a national security law in Hong Kong, so those 1,000 people at the U.S. consulate in Hong Kong. What are 1,000 people doing in Hong Kong at the U.S. consulate except to cause trouble? They're not there to eat dim sum. They were there to try to overthrow, you know, cause China. Well, that's all been solved now because China waited for Hong Kong for 20-something years, 22 or 23 years, to pass a national security law. All of the saboteurs and the Western puppets in Hong Kong refused to do it. So China passed a national security law last year. I've got to get my dates, but anyway, within the last 2 years, year and a half. Hong Kong, they can't do anything in Hong Kong now. So now they're back to Taiwan because they've got no answer to China. So now they just, you know, I mean, they have obviously since Trump, and they have obviously, and of course with Hillary Clinton's and Obama's pivot to Asia, back in, I think it was what, 2011 or whatever it was. They, obviously are trying to take down China, and so they're using Taiwan as an irritant for China. But it is such a joke. It is such a joke to think that, when Biden recently said that he would defend Taiwan militarily. I mean, are you serious? Your supply line is 11,000 kilometers to Taiwan. China's is 250 kilometers from the coast of China, 250 kilometers. And it's, the West the United States couldn't beat the Chinese in Korea with World War I and World War II vintage weapons. The Chinese had no navy, limited support from the Soviets for air power, and Mao kicked MacArthur's ass. And so now, since with Xi in the last 10 years, I think China has a better military than the United States. I think Russia and China have the two most powerful militaries in the world. And they're going to try to, defend Taiwan. I mean, of course, every empire needs to project, invincibility. They have to keep up that, that Wizard of Oz mask,
yes.
that Wizard of Oz mask that they are, no one can touch them, and full spectrum dominance, no one can touch us. It would be over in a week. It would be over in a week. I mean, it would be over before the United States could, China has so many now aircraft carrier killer missiles. They would wipe out the Sixth Fleet in the Pacific, the America's Sixth Fleet. They'd wipe it out in 2 days. There'd be nothing left. So it's just ridiculous. But as I've always said, China doesn't need to fire a bullet. People don't realize how small Taiwan is. It's only got like 30 million people. 23 million people. I'm getting my provinces mixed up. 23 million people. And 5% of Taiwan's people live on the mainland. A million Taiwanese live on the mainland. And they're not washing dishes and driving taxis. These Taiwanese on the mainland, they're CEOs, they're factory owners, they're multi-million dollar corporations working there, production plants, high technology plants. Just like the rest of the world, mainland China is Taiwan's manufacturing, logistics, and supply chain provider. So all China has to do is just cancel about 20,000 visas of these CEOs and businessmen,
right.
Send them home, send them back to Taiwan, and the Taiwanese economy would just collapse because their entire manufacturing, logistics, and supply chain for their economy to keep their businesses in Taiwan going, it would collapse, and the country would be on its knees in 1 month. So I'm not worried. First off, it's just bluster. It's just this, there's no way that the United States could even imagine to try to defend Taiwan. It's just PR optics to look like they're, still the toughest, biggest, baddest, empire, on the planet. And so I'm not too worried about it. I don't know, but it is, I'm trying to see if I can get you my, I'm trying to find my credit score here, and before we hang up, but
yes.
It's just not going to happen. And just this week, Canada and Australia are flying planes into Chinese airspace with the quote, because we're checking on the sanctions against North Korea to make sure that the sanctions are being observed. What are Canada and Australia doing in Canadian and Chinese airspace to be looking at North Korea? I mean, it's just harassment.
Yeah, they're poking the dragon, like they were poking the bear.
Poking the bear. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's Russia's already won in Ukraine. It's over. I mean, case closed. And although Poland might get some territory out of the deal, but
Jeff, that's another story, and I'm not. It's for me is all of this Poland situation and what's happening with this is just very knowing what I know and looking at this, how this is going. And when you mentioned in this video today about this organ harvesting, one of my first thoughts was how Poland is involved, because every country to some extent probably is involved.
Here, I found it. Here's my credit score. It's called sesame seed. Zhema Xinyong. It's called Zhema Xinyong. And so this is
goodness.
Tell me that you can see it. Can you see the?
Oh yes, I see it. 633. Now everyone with the numbers will be like, wow, the numbers. Okay.
It's not a great score, but it says Xinyong Lianghao. It says it's good. It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. I mean, I'm not on any blacklist.
You don't cause the trouble, right? That's what it says.
No.
Okay.
I'm above average.
Okay, you can fly planes, Jeff. I am so grateful today for all this information. I truly from my heart appreciate you coming on today and sharing this with us, because I had another awakening moments today that I was not expecting. Actually a few moments, and I would like to continue talking to you and learn from you, because you know so much, and people can find you. Tell me again, people can find you on the links down below, your website, your books. You also teach Chinese, as I've heard.
Well,
right?
yeah, but I teach some all this work. Unfortunately, I do not have a very good Q score because I don't get very many donations, unfortunately, for all of my hard work with my journalism. So I have to teach. I still have to keep teaching Chinese kids in China to make money for my wife and me to pay the bills here, because as you know, it's expensive in Europe.
Oh, we know, and it will continue getting more expensive for some time. But Jeff, thank you so much for today. Lots of appreciation. I will attach all the links that you send me down below the video.
Right, and I will give you a Buddhist bow, a Buddhist Confucian Taoist bow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye.